So talking about DC Comics just in general, let's talk about DC Comics because I know it's something that we both feel very strongly about.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm scared for DC Comics.
Okay.
They don't seem to be able to move books anymore,
Okay.
which is,
Is anybody able to move books anymore?
yeah, well, I mean, you know what I'm saying. They had been consistently losing out to Marvel once Marvel hit its stride, maybe in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
And for me, DC has always been, they're the number one, like they're the name brand because they were there before. They started out and they had kind of this unbroken line. Even after they did their reboot in the 60s, the Silver Age started and they introduced all these new characters. It wasn't very long before they brought everything that had happened before back into the fold.
Yeah.
And, they kind of had, they had a history that went all the way back to the beginning. Superman, the first superhero.
Yeah.
And so for me, Marvel was always more popular, but it was really, I think, a result of better branding. They had Stan Lee, who was pushing for them. But obviously DC has struggled a lot over the decades. And they're my favorite publisher. And, the comic industry is in a shambles right now. And there are rumors that, Marvel and DC both could be closing up house as far as comic publishing goes. Well, and that's kind of scary to somebody who's, lifelong comic fan.
I think that the entire print medium is kind of in a place right now where it's not the healthiest it could be. People still read, but they mainly read on these things.
Yeah.
Tablets or laptops. And it's all about the Kindle and the Nook and things like that. So, or do they even do that anymore? I don't know. I never had a Kindle or a Nook. But I do read comic books on my phone. And I found that's a good way for me to read comic books on the go.
Yeah.
Like I used to, back in the old days, carry a backpack around with me, and I would always have some comic books in my backpack so I could have something to read if I found myself bored or whatever.
Yeah. Anytime we went on a family trip, I'd pack my, my clothes, underwear, toothbrush, deodorant, and then I'd have to select comic books for my collection so I would have something to read. It would be a specially curated selection of comics to take with me on vacation, camping, Disneyland, wherever we went. I always had comics on me.
When I was a kid, like that was part of the ritual of going on a long car trip. And, my parents or my grandparents or whatever, they understood it. They would take me to the store to specifically buy comic books, new comic books that I could take with me on the trip to read.
Yep.
Because, anything to keep me from getting bored and antsy in the car.
Yeah.
Are we there yet? Shut up and read your comic book.
Yeah, that first stop for comics was always or the first stop for snacks was always at a convenience store, which is where they used to sell comics when I was really little.
What's there?
Yeah. And so I'd get my snacks and I'd get a few comic books and have something to do along the way.
So here's my thought about the DC versus Marvel rivalry. And as I see like the whole of the thing is that, back in the 50s, like DC was clearly king. Marvel was like, they had some good comics they were publishing, mainly like I think the monster books and some good Westerns. And The Model was a book that did really well for them at that time. But they were still kind of like subservient to DC Comics in a way, because at that time, like, I think DC even still was distributing Marvel's books because Marvel was doing pretty poorly for a while there. So they had to strike a deal with DC to distribute their books, which is why, even during the height of their superhero craze, they had a lot of those books where it was like Tales of Suspense was split between Iron Man and Captain America because they were only allowed to publish so many books as part of their deal with DC, who was still distributing them. So what wound up happening is because Stan wasn't writing down to people like a lot of people at DC were. Let's be honest, at that time. A lot of the DC not all of them. You had a lot of the sophisticated guys like John Broome and stuff, but a lot of them were just kind of like, we're just writing comic books for kids. They don't have to be too smart. We can recycle the plots. It'll be okay. That sort of Mort Weisinger philosophy of, well, we can do this story where Superman forces Jim Olsen to marry a gorilla again because it's been 8 years since we did that one, and those kids have all grown up. They don't read comic books anymore.
That guy's got so many gorilla wives.
So yeah, it was around, I think, like the late part of the 60s that Marvel started to overtake DC because there was kind of this idea with the fans at the time that you kind of started with DC and graduated up to Marvel Comics at a certain point. And for a while, the Marvels probably were a little more sophisticated.
I think that's what it was. Marvel they were writing for a more sophisticated, older audience, which is, I think, they stole a lot of DC's fire because everybody who had read the comics in the 50s, the DC comics in the 50s, and were fans of those, they were, see these Marvel books over here where they were a lot more interesting to them, obviously.
I think that kind of, at least, maybe not the perception of it, but it kind of started to change a little bit in the 70s when you had guys like Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, and they were kind of reinventing a lot of these characters, and you had characters like Swamp Thing and such as that. You had Jonah Hex and a lot of these characters that were kind of starting to push the boundaries of what DC was doing.
Yeah, I have a theory about that too. Go ahead.
Yeah, what's your theory about that?
Well, so all these guys who were writing these comics in the 70s for DC, these were the guys who, as kids, read the DC comics in the 50s, and they had grown up, and they loved those characters, and they decided to bring them back in a way that was more interesting to them, more personal to them. So I think that's why, DC in the 70s started to catch up to that level of sophistication that Marvel had. At least that's my take on it.
I think I've mentioned to you before that, like, my personal favorite writer of Superman comics is Elliot S. Maggin.
Yeah.
An exclamation point. And but like the thing that I really love about his Superman comics and also the Superman novels that he wrote 2 of them, and they're both fantastic, is that there's a very clear love of the character and the mythology that's in it. It's really obvious that this was a guy who loved Superman, loved Lex Luthor, loved Lois Lane, loved the Daily Planet, the city of Metropolis, loved Crypto. It's obvious the love this guy had for these characters.
He was the prototype for Grant Morrison.
Yeah. At the same time, he wrote a much more sophisticated, I feel, version of Superman than any other writer at the time. And there were a lot of good writers working on Superman. Like, I don't think Denny O'Neil ever was really comfortable with Superman, but there's no denying he's a talented writer. Carrie Bates was doing some really good stuff with Superman at the time. Len Wein was doing some really good stuff with Superman at the time. But I think Maggin just kind of had that sort of magic touch with the character that he really understood what had made the character tick, in previous decades. But
he had a reverence for
interpret it in such a way that made it relevant to kids of the Bronze Age. And honestly, I like a lot of his Superman comics better now than when I read them when I was a kid, because I kind of feel like those are comic books that he wasn't writing down to anybody. He was writing comic books that he enjoyed with those characters. And, when I read them as an adult, I was able to appreciate them as an adult, not just, the nostalgia goggles for some comic book that I loved when I was a kid. So, and that's always a good thing to see. So, You know, you had guys like that on Superman. You had writers like Denny O'Neil, Len Wein, Steve Englehart on Batman. And like I honestly kind of feel like Bronze Age Batman was where the character really started to solidify.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
That's my Batman. That's where I first met the character and fell in love with him. But even if I started reading them later, I still kind of feel like the character of Batman that I like, that's where it really started at. Now, you know, I love the Adam West television show.
Right.
For me as a kid watching that show and reading those comic books, I still saw that as being the same character, even though you could tell they were different, but kind of the soul of the character was the same, if that makes any sense. And you were just kind of viewing them.
We've talked about this before,
yeah. So like I kind of feel like those were things that kind of shaped my point of view of the character. And yeah, I like a lot of the grittier stuff, like the Frank Miller type stuff is good.
Yeah.
My favorite Batman comic is actually Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, which because I feel like it's a really interesting view of the character on like a psychological level.
Right.
And it's still pretty unique in that way. People don't really get that deep into the character's psyche that way.
There were a lot of really iconic stories coming out of that era, but I think you know, eventually there was a pushback for that sort of thing. People kind of resented the fact that Batman was kind of being portrayed as a psycho, which is not really, you know, far off from what the original intent of the character was. He was a guy who was deeply hurt as a child by the loss of his parents, and he had that trauma, and he used that to become, you know, the vigilante that he was. So, you know, but
I kind of tend to not think of Batman as being like a literally insane character.
No, for sure,
He certainly is a character that has like bags and bags of emotional issues that he has to work through.
Well, my view of the character is that's, you know, when he decided to become, you know, he's in his study and the bat comes crashing through the window and like, okay, I know what to do with this now. And that's Batman is his therapy. So, you know, had this psychological damage, but in becoming Batman, this is him working through that. So he should be, you know, there comes a point where in his career, he should be much more settled and not psychotic. So I get that part too, but
the thing that I always really like about that scene, and it's like this in every version that's been in the comic books, and I'd like to see it in a movie at some point because I think it's really important, but the movies never really seem to pick up on it. But the comic books, every single time this line is in there. That's it's, you know, he when he first is sitting there, he's talking about like, I need a disguise to strike terror into their hearts. And then when he sees the bat, he doesn't say, that's it, I'm gonna dress up like a bat, I'll make a bat-like costume. I will, you know, no, he says, I shall become a bat.
Right.
And it's that idea of becoming, of reinventing oneself that I think is kind of essential. It's not just essential to the character of Batman. Even though it very much is essential to the character of Batman, but just kind of like, it's a kind of a philosophy that defines that whole world, I think. And you could pretty much break every single character in Batman, every hero and every villain down to two very simple sentences, which is, something bad happened to me, I'm gonna put on a funny outfit. It's like, you know, it could be you fell into a tank of toxic waste and you're dressed like a clown. It could be like, you know, you got acid thrown in your face and now you're gonna split your outfit down the middle. It could be, you know, I was born looking like a penguin, so I'm gonna wear a tuxedo. Like, you know, that's generally how it goes. Is you know, and you know, maybe some might not have that much trauma. Like the Riddler was just kind of bored. That was the bad thing that happened to him. You know, Batgirl was originally motivated by people thinking Barbara Gordon was a plain Jane, so she's gonna wear this sexy Batman outfit to a Halloween party, and she winds up saving Bruce Wayne from Killer Moth, and she's like,
yeah.
Hey, this is, pretty fun, and I'm pretty good at it, so I think I'll keep doing it.
Right.
So, but on a basic level, that's kind of like the recipe for making a great Batman character is a little bit of trauma and a funny outfit. I was born in prison.
I think
I'm going to dress like a Mexican wrestler. Like that's how you do that.
Mexican wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. But I think there's there's a lot of fans, especially, newer fans, or I shouldn't say newer fans, maybe younger fans, they get lost in the idea of, that, what is the phrase? I know what I'm trying to say, but I can't express it. They don't see the whole picture when it comes to some of these characters.
Okay.
And they get caught up in that. And then you get, the Batman that is really, Looney Tunes, like the Frank Miller All-Star Batman version. Yeah. And, I think these characters are, they're archetypes, but there are a lot more, there are a lot more layers to them than a lot of people recognize. And I think a lot of that gets lost sometimes, especially when they shift creators so often. Back in the day, it would be, one guy would write a book for 4 years or whatever, but now it's like the guy will do 6 issues and then he's gone and somebody else comes in. And I think a lot of what these characters are about gets lost to fans and creators these days. Mm-hmm. So we got off on a big Batman tangent, which is not surprising to
me before. Well, maybe not. Maybe not
I should have expected. But the state of DC Comics now is, obviously they're they're struggling. They've been struggling for quite a while. Not only, in terms of business, but also creatively. They don't seem to know what to do with these characters anymore. And
I keep saying this, and I honestly feel like this is what AT&T wants, even if it's not 100% what they're getting out of DC Comics.
Yeah.
But the smartest thing that AT&T can do with these characters is to be like, we need to focus on what's the most recognizable, iconic versions of these characters that people respond to. And I don't just mean
which is
like you and me that have always read the comic books, but
but that's exactly how I think it should be.
Yeah. Superman.
Yeah.
Should be, always recognizable as Superman. He should always be the guy with the red cape and the this guy right here.
Super. Yep.
He should be that. Pretty much exactly. He should always pretty much exactly be that. Blue tights, red trunks, red boots, red cape, S on his chest, big curl on his forehead. This is Superman. This is exactly what Superman should be.
He's the big blue Boy Scout.
Yeah, and you don't want to stray too much from this character. This is what you want. This is what you want Superman to be. Batman.
Guy dressed like a bat.
This is Batman.
Yeah.
Pretty much exactly what you want Batman to be. You shouldn't stray too far from this. Now, maybe you want to put him in a black outfit as opposed to a blue and gray outfit. There's precedent for that, but the silhouette is the most important thing with Batman as far as that. I think that Wonder Woman is a really good example in how she's been handled. How I'd say, most people are pretty warm to the Gal Gadot version of Wonder Woman. And it's not 100% like the Linda Carter version of Wonder Woman, which I think, probably still is.
The wife and I were just talking about that just a couple hours ago.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I still think Linda Carter is probably the most, in terms of popular culture, the most omnipresent.
She's the most visible, yeah.
That's the one people think of.
That's the one people know, yeah.
It's one of those things, it doesn't surprise me if, Wonder Woman just comes up in conversation with, a normal person who doesn't read comic books, and they just kind of go, Wonder Woman! Just kind of instinctively, just a little bit of that theme song, because that's what people know. You know? But, I kind of feel like the Gal Gadot version of that hits all the right notes in all the right ways that people, even though it's different, still recognize, oh yeah, that's Wonder Woman, and they still love that version, even if it's different. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Like Superman doesn't have to be the Christopher Reeve Superman every single time. It could be something a little bit different.
But depends on who you ask.
The soul of the character needs to be there. I kind of feel like the Henry Cavill version of it nailed it. Like as far as that goes, I feel like it did some things differently.
We will get a lot of pushback on this, but I agree.
I know, but
he was the essence of Superman to me. He was, but there was no question when I was watching Man of Steel that this, is this Superman? This guy is Superman. Yeah, I bought it. Yeah.
One of the things I liked about it is that it did Superman differently. Like they tried with Superman Returns to just do the Christopher Reeve version of Superman again, and I don't think that they were that successful with that. I don't blame Brandon Routh for that. I think he's a good Superman.
Right.
But I do very much feel like when they tried to do that version of Superman again, they didn't quite get what it was that made that version of Superman work in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So you wound up with something that was neither fish nor fowl, and in my opinion, missed the mark.
Well, I think what happened was they set out to recreate the Christopher Reeve Superman.
Yeah.
But instead of just doing that, they decided to, explore how can we progress this character.
It was almost
once you progress him,
in a lot of ways,
he's no longer that because you're not Christopher Reeve and Richard Donner is not involved. This is something new. And so if you go and now Superman has, an illegitimate child, and then it's become something else. So you're not being true to what they set out to accomplish. That's not the Christopher Reeve Superman.
Yeah.
So
you know what I'm saying?
Man of Steel, a little abstract there, but
yeah, I got you. I think Man of Steel did the right thing in trying to do Superman in their own way.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked at Man of Steel as being like less of a this is the story of Superman kind of thing that we've seen like 100 times, where it's like, just beat for beat tells the story of Superman, and more sort of looked at the story of Superman in such a way where it's like, what if he was a real guy that existed today and grew up in today's world? What if he was a dude who is in his 30s right now? And how would that be the same? How would it be different? And that was an interesting take on the character. And I think a valid take on the character. It was different, but it wasn't so different to me that it was unrecognizable. Now, and a lot of people, I think, just kind of didn't want to like it.
Right.
I'm sure there were some people that went into it with an open mind, or maybe even looking forward to it, and wound up disliking it, because you're going to have that with everything.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is,
and some people clearly saw an entirely different movie.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like some people just went to that movie just ready to hate it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And they're gonna see what they want to see, and it might be something completely different from what you and I saw.
Right.
So
I don't need to see Superman rescuing kittens from trees. I know that's something that Superman does, and I don't think we need to waste valuable story time explaining. Everybody knows this about Superman. He's a nice guy. He rescues people. He rescues kittens from trees. They don't need to stop the plot of the movie and show us that. It's already something that's already built in. So, I talked to some people and they're like, oh, they should have shown Superman rescuing people. Like, we know Superman rescues people. We don't need to see that. Like, I sat down at the movie, with the idea in my head that this is Superman, and we just run with it.
Yeah.
We don't need to see, they don't need to explain to me who Superman is in the movie. But apparently a lot of people needed that. So,
I guess it would have been nice to see that sort of thing, sure.
Yeah, sure.
It's
it's not necessary. Is the thing.
Yeah. I kind of try to look at things as I'm not always successful at this, but I kind of try to look at things as what they are instead of what they aren't or what I feel like they should have been.
Yeah,
and, I know talking about The Last Jedi earlier, there were a lot of things where I was like, this should have been done differently. But to me, it's not quite the same thing as this because it's not like Rian Johnson was doing a reboot of Star Wars.
Yeah,
he was continuing the story that had already been set up. To me, if anything, it's more comparable to Superman Returns.
Yeah,
and it's just like I don't know how the story should have gone after where we left off, but it probably shouldn't have gone here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like I don't know where it should have gone. I don't have any preconceived ideas as to where it should have gone. But
well, here they hand him the keys to the Millennium Falcon, and they're like, "Yeah, you're driving." And he's like, "I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to crash right into this asteroid." You don't do that. You keep flying,
So
it's.
But yeah, like if I were in charge of DC right now, comic book wise, what I would do is try to keep these characters like pretty close to how they appear on the merchandise. And how they generally appear on the merchandise is how they looked in the 80s, because that's what honestly sells the best.
That style guide.
Yeah, I kind of figure, I've said this before, pretty much all these characters, I would want them to look as close to that Jose Luis Garcia Lopez look.
Mm-hmm.
Very few exceptions. Like, I would probably want to keep Dick Grayson as Nightwing and have Tim Drake as Robin, because I kind of feel like that gives you more characters anyway.
You talk to people about this, and they seem to think that, if you say stuff like that, like, oh, Superman should look like Superman, they seem to think that what you want is stagnation. And that is the last thing I want with these characters. I want them to progress. I don't want them to wipe away, all of Dick Grayson's arc where he grew up and left Robin behind and became Nightwing. I want them to keep that. Mm-hmm. That's valuable. That's, natural progression of the character. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is I want them to be recognizable when I look at them. And it is not just visually, but also narratively. They have to be the same character. You can't give me another character that has an S on his chest and a red cape and tell me that's Superman when he's clearly not.
Yeah.
He clearly wasn't. I'm talking about the New 52 here, not Man of Steel.
Yeah, I gotcha. I picked up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when I saw the pictures of Tyler Hoechlin in his new Superman outfit, and people were saying, "Oh, it's got like some nods to the New 52 version in there." I'm like, why would you want to have any nods to a failed version of the character?
Right.
That's what that is. It failed. It clearly failed. If it hadn't have failed, they would have done Rebirth.
Yeah.
No cause for it, because.
And here's the crazy thing. There are people that love the Tyler Hoechlin version of Superman. They're like, oh, he's perfect and everything. And he has these elements from the New 52 version, but they hated the Henry Cavill version of, I said his name right this time, the Henry Cavill version, because of that exact same reason. There was this perception that he was somehow the New 52 Superman when he was clearly not. That movie went into production before the New 52 was even an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So,
sometimes life just ain't fair, man.
Right? That's why I will. Nobody can tell me there's no bias against Zack Snyder. That's what this all comes down to. And it was all about the timing, because his movie came out and it was a different take on Superman right at the time when they had, turned Superman into something else.
Yeah.
He was no longer the classic Superman. And people associated those two together. And they're like, okay, well, this is what DC's doing to us now. They're offending us by giving us this New 52 Superman, and the Man of Steel is the same thing, and I'm going to hate them. And it stuck. And there was nothing that Zack Snyder could have done that would have changed that perception, except maybe leave the trunks on. I think that would have. I think Henry Cavill shows up on screen and he's wearing red trunks. Everybody's like, yeah, Superman.
Well, maybe they should just go ahead and put the red trunks back on him.
They definitely should.
I kind of feel like they should. You know, if there's one thing that I absolutely did disagree with Zack Snyder on is where he was like, yeah, we just thought that didn't really work in this new world. And I'm just kind of thinking to myself, he's already wearing blue tights. Is having red trunks over the blue tights, like, you know.
You know, that's always my thing. You get into these arguments with the fans. They're like, oh, Superman's trunks are, you know, they're a throwback.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, like, that's the thing that breaks Superman for you, is the fact that he wears red trunks.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the fact that he can lift entire mountains over his head. He wears the red cape. The red cape's fine. He can fly in outer space. It's the red trunks. I can't be a fan of Superman because he wears red trunks.
It's kind of a silly thing to me to hang a dislike of the character, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
A friend of mine who was a total normie, never read a comic book in his life, like, he'd asked me like about Superman comics, and you know, if he'd specifically asked me, hey, can I borrow one? I'd kind of like to read one. And I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly the sort of thing you want to hear from a normie who's never read a comic book in their entire life. It's like, absolutely, I will give you comic books to read. And I got him, I let him borrow Jeff Johns' Secret Origin.
Oh, yeah. Good one.
It had just come out recently, and I'd really enjoyed it. And it seemed to be like a good comic book to show to somebody where it's like, you want to know who this character is? This is who this character is.
Mm-hmm.
And
I took issue with Secret Origin at the time. This is another little sidebar. But I think it was mostly because I always thought John Byrne did it so well, and there was no reason to get rid of, you know, what he did.
Yeah,
but
well,
anyway,
that would have been another one that,
back on,
you know, I could have showed him, because that one was good too. But my point is, I let him read the Superman comic, and he really enjoyed it, and asked me to read a few more. So I'd bring him some more to read. And when he found out about the new 52 version of Superman, and he's like, they took the red trunks off of him. Why? That's what makes him look like Superman.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of crossover between comic book fans and wrestling fans.
Yeah,
and wear trunks over their tights. And they pretty much always have, and they accept that. Nobody's like, oh, well, so and so. You know me in wrestling, I can't name any guys. Hulk Hogan, anyway. You know, nobody's ever like, oh, he needs to get rid of the trunks.
Yeah.
Like, that's just what Superman does at this point. That's the uniform for a superhero. So many of them have trunks. I don't get why it's such a weird thing to people.
Yeah. It's nobody wears capes anymore. They don't complain about
it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like as far as comic book publishing goes, I think certainly we're gonna see some kind of sea change, and I'm not sure what that's gonna be.
Yeah. With regard to DC, before you know, AT&T bought them out, or bought Warner Brothers and took control of DC, you know, there was this what is it called? 5G or not 5G?
Yeah.
What is it? Yeah, they had the new initiative.
5G. I know what you're talking about.
So they're going to get rid of all their iconic characters, and they're going to replace them all with new versions of these characters. There's a new guy in the Batman costume.
Yeah.
There's you know, John Kent, Superman's son with Lois, who was a great character when they first introduced him.
Yeah.
They're going to age him to adulthood, and he's going to be the new Superman, and there's a new Wonder Woman. And, you know, that's not something that comic fans want, I don't think. Fans of DC don't want to see that necessarily. I mean, there are probably some who are excited about it, but nobody wants to see Superman not be Superman anymore. And, you know, there's no need to replace the general public who knows the branding of these characters. They're not gonna like latch onto them. They're not gonna be like, oh, there's, you know, somebody who's not Clark Kent, that's Superman, that's awesome. They're just gonna be like, they're not gonna care.
Yeah,
it's not gonna bring in new fans. It's gonna alienate people is what's gonna happen. But then obviously AT&T clearly understood this, it seems. At least I'm hoping they are. And they've decided to cancel that project. And hopefully what we're getting is a little bit of a course correction.
What I think they're going to do, because they still want to use those concepts and everything, is as it is, it's going to be like an Elseworlds kind of thing, not like the mainline books.
Totally down with.
And I think
problem. I'm excited for that.
I think even at the time when they first were talking about doing it, the intention was to still have a line of books that was more focused on classic versions of the characters. But I'm not sure if that was going to be like the main line or not. I'm on which one was supposed to be the main line, and it just seemed like a strange thing to do to me. I don't know.
Right.
But again, it's the sort of thing where it's like, you can introduce your new Wonder Woman character, but at the end of the day, which is going to be the one that they're going to sell the most T-shirts of? It's still going to be, Diana Prince. That woman is going to sell the most T-shirts and purses and whatnot, tchotchkes and things like that, key rings and such. They're always going to want that original version of Wonder Woman. Likewise, Superman is always going to be the guy in the red trunks. The general public wants. They're not going to give a crap about the new 52 version of Superman. They never did. I never saw that stuff flying off the shelves.
Yeah.
So,
I have family members who have never read comics, but they know who Superman and Wonder Woman are. And if I tell them about the new 52, they're going to be like, what? Like, they don't know. They don't have a clue. And they're not going to be interested in finding out what it means.
So I'd see people see it and be like, that's a weird looking Superman.
Yeah.
Like that's somebody who's never read a comic book in their life. So, it's, they know really Christopher Reeve. That's what he's supposed to look like. So
completely the opposite of what DC should be focusing on doing right now, in my opinion. So, I mean, I've been pretty vocal about that online. But, I mean, nobody's going to be able to argue with me that that's something that the general public is going to get interested in. And the only thing it's going to do is turn off longtime fans, which is exactly what they did, and they haven't recovered yet. And they're still, like we mentioned earlier, the comic industry is dying, possibly on its last legs, and they're still trying to push in that direction. Let's get rid of these characters that everybody knows, literally everybody, and replace them with completely new characters. That'll save us.
No. Just but whatever. If it winds up dying, it winds up dying, and there's gonna be anything we can do about it, I guess.
So, yeah. So I'm confident the characters and concepts will survive.
Oh, of course.
It's the universe that I've spent, most of my 42 years now, dedicated to. That will be gone. So
yeah, that's sad.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, those guys are going to be like King Arthur and Robin Hood and Sherlock Holmes, Dracula. They're just going to be around forever.
Yeah, they're modern. They won't go away.
Reinterpreted and reinvented sometimes, but the core of the character is always going to be there. I almost kind of wonder a lot of the times with a lot of this stuff if it would be better for the just the overall core of the character if it went public domain.
Yeah.
Just anybody could do anything with Superman they wanted to, and
at the very least
keep it closer to the classic version, because most people would probably prefer to adhere
Yeah,
that classic.
At the very least, what'll happen is people who love those characters and have a passion for them will be the ones who step up and decide to tell the stories that they want to hear, that everybody wants to hear. So
yeah, exactly.
One thing that I would like to see DC do right now to hopefully try to stave off their death, their slow and painful death, is maybe do an anthology series where they can give us adventures of all of these characters, all of the characters that we know, the iconic versions set in different time points, and get creators who understand what those characters were like back then to present them.
Yeah.
So we could have 1 month we could have a Silver Age Superman story, and then we could have like a, I don't know, Frank Miller Batman type story, and try to run with that for a while and see if they can't bring any of these other characters up to that iconic level. I just mentioned Superman and Batman as examples, but there are plenty of other characters they could do in this kind of thing.
So
I don't know, something I'd like to see.
Yeah. An anthology book would be good, because one of the things I do kind of worry about as far as like if DC Comics did end is what would become characters like say Wildcat or Dr. Midnight or Question and other ones that are like not necessarily like the most famous characters, OMAC, but characters that I like, and I'm always happy to see them pop up again.
Yeah.
But I mean, if they're gonna license their books out to another publisher, like obviously there's gonna be other publishers that are gonna go after like Superman and Batman, but would they necessarily want to go after OMAC or the Quest, or hell, even somebody like Zatanna or Black Canary, or anyone like that? Would Green Lantern even be like too obscure for them to deal with?
You hurt me, man.
So
Green Lantern's my guy.
Yeah. So
I can't go away. If only that movie had been better.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are like, it's not that bad. I'm like, no, it's not that bad, but it wasn't as good as it really should have been.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. I enjoy it every time I watch it.
Yeah.
But it could have been way better. Way better.
So
anyway.
But, hopefully they'll get it right with the next time. I guess they're doing the show. Hopefully I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
But, whatever. So